I'm Reverend Joy Fletcher, and it is my privilege and honor to serve on the executive board of International New Thought Alliance, as well as the president of Divine Science Ministers Association. I'm really grateful to be here and to have this honor to preside over this morning's activity. Our first speaker is a colleague, a friend, and we've served together on other boards. And his name is Dr. Tim Stewart, and he began his New Thought journey 28 years ago in religious science and expanded his studies to divine science 24 years ago. He completed practitioner training in religious science through what was then Religious Science International, now part of Centers for Spiritual Living. Coming from a traditional background, he previously served as a minister to congregations in Tennessee, Georgia, and Louisiana, and held the position at Evangel Bible Institute, now known as Omega Institute. He was ordained in divine science through United Divine Science Seminary. Dr. Tim holds certificates as hypnotherapist, hypnotherapy instructor, and spiritual life coach. His leadership roles have included serving as president of the Divine Science Ministers Association and the Divine Science Federation International. He currently serves as vice president of the Divine Science Ministers Association and president of the International New Thought Alliance. So I'd like to introduce my friend, and I'm sure your friend, Dr. Tim Stewart.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Joy. I wish I could start off every morning with the music that we had in here. You feel that way? I know something hit the floor. I'll step on it later. All right. There are so many things that we can say about our theme, the power of new thought now, in this moment. And then as we go to love, service, and wisdom, today as we honor love. How many people today have had somebody tell them that they love them? Somebody said, I love you. All right. If you missed out on that, you didn't hold your hand up, my friend. And I know I hugged you, and as I did, I'm talking to this lady right here behind you. I gave you a hug and said, I love you. And she knows that. But I want you to know that you are loved. But let's get to the here and now. Let's get to the here and now, not just in this room, but something is the here and now throughout not just our country, not just our nation, but something that is now for the entire global community. And that is, we're seeing an experience around the world, not just here, an experience where we see people living in a state of division. How many nod your head and say, yeah, you've seen that, right? We're living in a time that, for me, I don't know that I've ever seen people quite as divided. It is a profound thing to see. We see people who today are struggling just to have basic human rights. We see a time when people have to fight to have their voices heard in political arenas. We see women who have to be concerned about having just essential health care. We have people who wonder if they're going to be able to maintain their right to be married to the person they love. All of these things are there. And when we look at that and we feel that pressure, we feel that weight, it's far too easy for us us as spiritual people, us as New Thought people, it's too easy for us to sometimes to drift into a consciousness of us versus them. Now, in my bio, they said that I had that traditional background, and I did. And we used to have an expression when we'd say something. We'd say, you might as well say amen or oh me. And sometimes we have to understand that. I overheard a conversation that wasn't intended for me yesterday, but I had to admit, not only that, but several people I know, they kind of wake up in the mornings and they want to check the obituaries to see if certain people are listed there. Amen or oh me. Am I right? We do that. We drift into that. But if we're going to be true to our spiritual principle, if we're going to be true to this power that we find in New Thought, we have to live from a different truth. We don't just try to be nice to people. We don't just try to put on that face or that front whenever we're around them, but instead we recognize that it is a radical oneness, And it's practicing that oneness. Something that, as we become conscious of it, it will be the foundation. It will be that pushes us forward to what I'm also going to talk about, and that's inspired action. It's a necessary step to have that radical love. Melinda Kramer wrote, saying, the truth is there is no separation in God. Now, I take that literally. There's no separation in God. I see most of the congregation here this morning, my gosh, is women. Most of the congregation are women. Well, that's true. It's over. So as I see that, divine science founded by women. Also, you'll find in the beginning of one book it says, without equality, there is no unity. Without equality, turn around and look at somebody and say that. Without equality, there is no unity. So, when you recognize that, you understand for a moment that love isn't just something that's put on a greeting card. It's not somebody you say to them just because you like hanging out with them or that you're kind of like-minded. But it's something that goes much deeper than that. It's the recognition of a singular, infinite intelligence, a singular, infinite intelligence that is the very divine identity, even of those that we consider on the, quote, other side of our views or opinions. Now, I know I have a small crowd. I'm going to say something, and I may need to ask them to lock the doors because, I'm going to say, you got it? I'm not talking about what somebody taught. I'm not talking about the actions of their life. I'm talking about their divine identity. So I can take someone from history and say that if you look at Adolf Hitler or if you look at Jesus, they both have an equal divinity. A difference in their awareness, their awakening, but whether you're looking at Adolf Hitler or Jesus, you're looking at the same level of divine essence expressing. Good, I didn't lose anybody. But we have to realize that even about those that seem to be our opposition sometimes. It's that sacred life expression that breathes the life into us and even to those who are fighting against us. It's the divine glue that holds us together. But yet it's a little bit difficult sometimes. We face this friction. We come into a place like this and we talk about it and it feels good. And then we go out the door and there's something about us, some people call it ego, but it's this sense of self that suddenly anything that comes against that becomes something other than us. It's that thing that someone would rather be right They'd rather be right about something rather than to experience wholeness and completeness. And that sense of self, that ego thrives on making someone the other. We have mental habits that we have to overcome, that projection that we put on someone sometimes. And when I talk about projection, understand me. That's right. I share examples of something, okay? You know, I'm never concerned about what someone says about me if they truly know me. I won't go into the example. I never worry about that. But when someone comes up and they don't know me and they make a judgment about me. Now, I've experienced that just as a white man. I imagine, Tracy, you've had people do that. They look at you and judge you about something. Rather than looking at her and knowing the intelligence, the wisdom, the love that I know resides in you and expresses through you. You're a wonderful light. My life is enriched by you. Okay, and I can say that to a number of people here. She just happened to be up here looking and close by. But it becomes that. So we're using this law of consciousness when other people, we're using the law. You're always using it, but we're building. We are helping create that world of separation. And then we wonder why the situation seems to grow worse than better. Amen or oh me? We get there and we other. So we have to have our own vision, our own dream. Last night, Dr. Martin Luther King was mentioned, and I'm going to mention him again, because he stood in 1963 at the Lincoln Memorial, and he gave his famous speech, "I have a dream." I've seen that so many times, and I love the tenor of his voice and the way he said that when he said, "I have a dream." But that dream, he didn't realize it, perhaps in the sense that New Thought people, he was expressing a profound spiritual law. Do I have any Neville Goddard fans in this room other than me? If you're a Neville fan, Neville talks about your wonderful divine or your wonderful human imagination. And that we should imagine that desired state that we want as if we're already there experiencing it, if we're living in the end. And when Dr. King said, "I have a dream," and he began to expound on that, he had that vision. He had been doing that imagination. His dream wasn't something that was a passive wish. It was that blueprint for a future, as he said, where little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. Now, part of that, you understand, included the white children that were there. It wasn't about taking those, even though their parents may have been the very ones who were opposing him, because he talked about a time when the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners would sit down at the same table of brotherhood. Is that right? You see, if we're going to live in the now, we have to somehow understand that we can overcome and leave behind our past and join together in the power of love. Love helps us overcome that. So the vision included that. He wanted his own children to be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. But he envisioned it as a time that he imagined, I think, living and seeing that. But what did that birth? What did that give birth to? Because the other part of my title is that radical love, looking at those who you may feel like are destroying everything that you stand for. They're fighting against it. To love them inspires to action. And it was that inspired action that led him to lead a march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. It wasn't hatred or anger toward those who were about to rush them on the other side. That particular day is now referred to as Bloody Sunday. a horrible experience to think of when we think of it in that context of history, but it was inspired action that started with a divine love that said, I love my children and I love humanity enough that I see a time when they can live together in harmony. When I said a moment ago to Tracy that she's enriched my life, I can look around at many people. I thought I saw, I did. I see Darrell Watkins back here. Now, Darrell's church, they prefer calling it a queer church, if I'm not mistaken, okay? And I can go there as a straight white male, and I feel as at home there as I do if I were at my house sitting on the sofa, because I'm at home where love is, okay? I'm at home where love is. Darrell, you have enriched my life. Jerry, you have enriched my life. And I think that in that divine vision, he may have realized what humanity would miss out on if we did not reach this place of love, and he had to take action from it. Today, well, let me say this. When I was at the Center for Spiritual Living in Nashville, and I served there as an assistant for many years, ordained in divine science and salaried by a religious science church. During Black History Month, we had more of a poster board that had been given to us, a display, and it listed the accomplishments of black people. Everything from the traffic light that keeps you from getting in a wreck every time you go through an intersection, up and down to the procedure that was, and I actually meant to put his name here, and I can't think of it right now, Thomas. He's referred to as doctor. He was unable to complete his medical degree because he lost his savings during the stock market crash in 1929. But he went on to work and get an honorary doctorate from Harvard so he could be on the faculty and teach a surgical technique that's used for babies that are suffering with like blue baby syndrome. And thousands have been saved according to him. A black man who never got to finish college, but was part of the faculty at Harvard Medical School, okay? Today, I can apply that same thing. Do you know that as much friction as we hear about people who come across our border, whether they have documents or not, no human being is illegal. So let's get that, my thing. I'm passionate about some of this. But so much talk. But understand that every time you watch a television, you have a Latin heritage man who did part of the invention that makes our televisions possible. This crosses over into the LGBTQ world. How many people in here, if you ever had a surgery, anybody here ever had surgery? There's a good chance that part of the surgical tools that were used during that surgery were, the patent on those, many of them, are held by a black woman who happens to be married to a New Thought minister ordained through Dr. Michael Beckwith's church. And she's a black woman that developed these tools. If we didn't have all of this wonderful, beautiful diversity, we wouldn't have many of the glorious things that we enjoy in life. And it was this vision that says, I believe there's a better day. A day that people will listen to our ideas. They'll listen to that and recognize that divine oneness that's there. So we are all enriched by this. But it took inspired action. The love, and I used the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Again, it wasn't hatred. It wasn't anger. It was love. It did not mean that they didn't feel the blows and the pain when things began to happen. But it did mean they did not drop the vision. And I'm so proud that I don't have to call it the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I can call it the Joe Louis Bridge. I see a smile when I said that, because that's what it is. It represents something that's good. We can transform that which is a memory of separation and hatred into something that is a reminder of divine love. So today, whatever is yours to do in life, let it be that you find that wonderful sense of love that gives you the path to the divine action. And when you go out throughout the rest of this week, I want you to use a little tool here. Do a little, we talk about creative visioning. And hopefully everybody is beyond that spot in here, because I'm talking mostly to ministers and practitioners and people are there. You're past that spot of just needing to get the parking space. Didn't we all try to manifest those? And it's fine if you're going to the store. You can still do that. That's okay. I'm not judging any of it. But whenever we go out of here, when you meet somebody this week and you know that perhaps they disagree with you, I want you to take a moment like you're hitting a pause button and pause the projection you're putting onto that person. Let me add something here. See, we in New Thought, we often talk about the pain we suffer as if we're always the ones who are wronged in some way. The amen or me on that one. Okay? Rather than saying sometimes we have to push the pause button on our own projections that we put on others. And we have to refuse to judge them by sometimes the skin of their opinions or the color of their skin or any other thing. We have to put a pause and stop that moment of judgment. That's the first thing. The second thing in this practice is to affirm their divine identity. That's difficult sometimes. When I said that Hitler and Jesus had the same level of divine identity, they didn't have the same level of awareness of it. Okay? But we have to affirm the divine identity. And we use this thing as one with. We have to understand that if our ego today is so small, we talk about big egos, if your ego is so small that it doesn't include the person sitting next to you, our sense of self, ego, sense of self, if it doesn't include the other people in this room, then your ego actually needs to grow, because it needs to include all of humanity. And then they become not your non-ego, not your other, but your alter ego. So that when somebody puts their foot on the throat of another human being, it's as if they're putting it on my throat and your throat and yours and every one of us here. We have to get that sense that there is no other. There's only different expressions of the one. So, affirm their divine identity. Pause the projection. Affirm their divine identity. And take that moment to close your eyes and imagine that person. To see them sitting, as I use the expression, at the table of brotherhood. Sitting in that place where suddenly they have come to an expression of their highest and most conscious self. And that's sometimes a challenge. Rather than imagining somebody, could you imagine today, and I won't call names, but imagine the political person that you think of as being most opposed to everything that an enlightened person would be. But imagine for a moment if that political person had an epiphany and suddenly was overwhelmed with this realization of divine love and how they had been failing to express that, of this divine oneness. Suddenly, everything would have to change, because you see, as I often say, racism cannot live in an enlightened consciousness. Homophobia cannot live in an enlightened consciousness. And there's a term called homomisia, which doesn't mean a fear, it means a hatred, okay? That cannot live in an enlightened consciousness. Okay? Xenophobia cannot live in enlightened consciousness because we get to that point that there's no other, there's only that alter ego that is also that which I am. Lisa Stewart, you are also that which I am. And she once pointed out, yes, we have the same name, but well, at that particular point in time, I think we were both married, perhaps, when you said that. It says, we're both married, but not to each other. Okay? So, but when we understand that, when we get to that level. So, radical love, that is the greatest technology of the New Thought movement. That every time you choose to see that divine identity instead of a human flaw, you're participating in the same miracle of consciousness that fueled the dream of 1963 that I spoke of. You're living in that same consciousness. You're being the architect of a new era in new thought, a new era in new thought. And so we're here today not just to listen to someone's talk. We're not here today just to see old friends, and I love, well, young friends, all right, that I've known for a long time. We're not just here for that. That's a wonderful part of it. That's a wonderful part of it. But today, we are here that we can be the living evidence of a higher law. We can be the living evidence of radical love. We can do that. But we need to allow love to fill our consciousness rather than any thought of duality or separation, any thought of othering. You can use that imagination. Build the world you want to see. Rather than imagining how terrible it is, imagine it as you want it to be. And I have to, because we've talked about this quite a bit, and I've used this term, inspired action several times. It's kind of been my mantra over the past few weeks. But let it drive you to inspired action. You can be on the, we've talked about getting off the meditation mat several times here and doing something. You can sit there on that mat until you understand that realization of divine love, but then it's time to let it inspire you to that place of not just loving, but be the love. Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. Say this with me. I choose to be the love that changes this world. And we can do that. Thank you. And so it is.